business, life, and relationships. This is the Growth to Freedom Show. Now, here is your host, Dan Kuschell.
Welcome to growthtofreedom.com. Wow, we have got an incredible show for you today. By the way, I'm Dan Kuschell, and thanks for making us part of your day. I have a question for you as you're watching right now, as you're listening. What if you had the ability to go out there and get what you want and learn how to model other successful people? Or what if you came to realize it wasn't as hard as you've been led to believe, right? And you could tap into resources to lead, be inspired, and get access to the coaching and wisdom of some of the top thought leaders in the world, not available anywhere else. Well, that's what today's show is going to bring you, and I am so excited for today. Our show, by the way, is presented by doneforyousolutions.com. We'd love to connect with you. You can join us on Twitter at Dan_Kuschell. That's Dan_KUSCHELL, or email us at info@growthtofreedom.com. That's info@growthtofreedom.com. And by the way, stay tuned. Near the end of the program today, we've got a special resource package that I would love to tell you all about. It's going to give you access to some of the best information, wisdom, coaching on being a better communicator, being better at influence, better at marketing, building a business, building a better team. So we'll talk about that here near the end of the show. So let's dive into it. Today's guest is a special guest. I had a chance to meet this gentleman through Joe Polish and Genius Network, which as you're watching or listening, you've probably heard a lot about. Greg Rollett is an expert. He's the president of the Ambitious Media Group. He's the president of Ambitious.com and co-founder. He's also, if you had a chance to look at his resume, this guy has gone out and done some incredible things. He's a rapper. He's been in a band. He's played at Madison Square Garden. He's written for Mashable, Huffington Post. He's a who's who when it comes to understanding the media, how to be able to utilize the media, how to manufacture credibility, build positioning. And you know what he does? He helps people just like you improve and accelerate your positioning to accomplish more. So I'm proud to have you a part of the show today. Greg, how are you?
I am doing fantastic, Dan. Super excited to be here, man.
Awesome. Well, let's dive into it. I'm going to take a left turn a little bit from what we talked about the other day. It was fascinating to get a chance to talk to you at Joe's Genius Network here. And so I want to dive right into it. I was listening to an interview that you did recently with somebody, and there was something you said in there that was just really captivating. So I want to dive right into it with this idea. You talked about, it's one thing to find a why, but it's as important to find a way. Why don't you dive into that and tell our listeners, our viewers, what that's all about?
Yeah, so this is really, really powerful because there's so many people that are, find your passion. You got to find your passion. You got to find what you care about. What drives you? What drives you to get up in the morning? And I do believe that you need that. And each and every person has that drive, but it's not enough to just know that, yeah, I want to start a business, that, yeah, I want to start a family, that, yeah, I want to lose weight. It's great. But if you don't have a blueprint to actually make that why a reality, well, then you're just dreaming, right? And it's great to dream. I want people to dream. I want people to dream again because when you start as a young person, I got 2 young kids, a 3-year-old and a 1-year-old, they're dreamers, right? They're the crazy stuff that comes out of their mouth is just insane. Their imagination runs wild, and as you go through school and through college and university and get your first job, you stop the dreaming. So I want you to dream again, but without the way to make that dream a reality, well, then you are just stuck daydreaming. You are still stuck. You're still complacent. You're still going to keep going through the monotonous and the day-to-day, and you're not going to get ahead in life. So you need to have the reason why, the reason that you get out of bed, the burning desire behind you, but you got to have a path to get there. You got to know what step 1 is. You got to know what step 2 is. You got to know that you need to put your left foot in front of your right foot and then your right foot in front of your left foot. Put your pants on just like everybody else, but you got to have forward progress and motion, or else you just have a dream. And so, Dan, I think that that's really, really important because there's so many speakers out there. There's so many guru-y, expert-type people. You got to have passion. You do, right? Because otherwise, you're a dentist and you're working with patients 9 to 5, and you just hate being a dentist. You got to have the passion and the why that you do it, but without the way, none of it matters.
Oh, that is so powerful. A way to come out with a right hook right out of the gate. So I want to back up just a little bit to talk a little bit about your background. You're a dad of 2. You have Ryder and Colton, if I hopefully I've got their names right.
You got that right.
Right?
Yeah.
You've been married for 16 years. So to kind of give context of who Greg is, right? If I asked your wife, right, you've been married 16 years, what's the
married for 8, together for 16. We were high school sweethearts, actually. I met her at her sweet 16, and we've been dating ever since.
That's awesome. Now, if I asked your wife of
I'm not that old yet.
If I asked her, what are the best qualities that you possess that have allowed you to achieve success, what do you think she would say to our viewers and our listeners today?
I think one of them is hard work, is that she knows really the hours that go into this, because she has made sacrifices, and I've had to make sacrifices in our relationship in order to get where I am today. So I do think she would say hard work, because instead of going on the nice beach vacation, I'm got headphones on and I'm banging away at whatever it was, whether it was in the music career and I was getting ready for a big show or a big tour and I was perfecting every song and every set and every transition, or now in the business, if you have a big launch coming up or you got a big client you need to perform for. So I think that there's the hard work part, but the other part of it is determination, because when she met me as a 16-year-old kid and I wanted to be a white rapper, right? I wanted to be Master P when I was 16 years old, for a frame of reference. It was kind of odd, right? And for her to see me through that and to see the progression to actually, touring the country and playing at venues like Madison Square Garden and the Knitting Factory and Hollywood Boulevard, to see that it is not an overnight success, that it was, years and years of dive bars and playing in front of 3 people. And even when we started the business, making your first $47 sale to having your first $1,000 day to your, hitting the 6-figure mark and now growing a big company, none of this happened overnight. So for her to see the determination, even at that stage where you're not actually seeing the results from, how much work you're putting in, I think that those two things is what would come out of her mouth first.
Well, that's fantastic. And it reminds me of the bamboo tree, right? You have the foundation, and underneath the soil, you've got a lot of stuff going on. And then after 5 long years, finally it sprouts, and then it grows, 50 feet in less than 60 days. As you look at what you're building, we got a chance when we were at Joe's event to talk about your 2 kids a bit. And it's obviously you're, driven by your wife, your kids, and having a legacy. As you think about what you're building with ambitious.com, right, and what you're looking to do, I got a chance to read a little bit of your site, and I want to talk about that in the next segment. But for your 2 kids, what would you say that you would want to leave them with as far as success? Like, what examples, what would be certain values that you'd want to make sure were instilled in Ryder and Colton that would carry your legacy forward down the road?
Yeah, so this is really cool. I actually just crystallized it talking to someone else this morning, and it finally came to me of what I'm really building with ambitious.com is a roadmap or a blueprint for them to show them that they can do anything that they want in the world. And it doesn't have to be in business. It could be in sports. It could be in entertainment. It can be in a professional career. It could be in a relationship. So all the stories that I'm building on ambitious.com is leaving them little bits and pieces of, hey, you can be a little bit like this person, a little bit like this person. And, we're all different, but you can find your way. And the other thing that I think, again, part of my why is my kids, but the way for me is ambitious.com. And by building this huge business, I want to say that, wow, my dad built that. And if my dad built that, he's taught me these lessons so I can go out and build anything that I want as well. One of the best things that my dad allowed me to do was to do the music thing. Right? It was not the popular choice to drop out of college with all these student loans behind me to go and tour the country and to keep feeding money into this. And, again, being the rapper, I'm a white rapper, right? It was like the weirdest career of all time. But he gave me that. And now with Ambitious, I think I'm able to tell even more stories to my kids. I'm basically collecting the best chicken soup for the soul book of all time that I can pass on to them and show them that they can do anything that they want. And here's the roadmap, here's the blueprint, here's other people to model that you can go out and live this kind of life. And I think that's really, really exciting. And until you and I had that conversation, I had another conversation today about it, now it's finally all clicking, and I'm firing on all cylinders for it.
Yeah, that's fantastic. You and I have a very similar passion that way. The reason I created growthtofreedom.com was very similar. I wanted to leave a footprint, a blueprint for my kids to be able to know, there's some of the greatest wisdom in the world to have access to be inspired by, to, as you call it, find that way, right? And give them the inspiration to find their why as well. And so, that's really awesome. Now, one of the things in one of your recent interviews, you talked about this passion, and for you, it sounds like it's one of the traits that you've been ingrained with, is go get what you want, right? And you started your first business essentially at 16, as I understand. You created basically a record label in your senior year of high school, gathering up. You sold 1,000 copies or so. But early on, you recognized that life was out for you to go get. Nothing was going to be handed to you, nothing that you were going to be entitled to. It was about the hustle and being able to go after what you wanted. So talk about that mindset and how it relates to what you're building with Ambitious, and also as it relates to what you're teaching your kids.
Yeah, so when I was in high school, I wasn't poor, but I was not wealthy, or I wasn't rich. I didn't have the new cool, Tommy Hilfiger gear or whatever it was. And what I noticed, and it was a kind of a materialistic thing back when I was 16, is I wanted the nice car, I wanted the nice clothes, I wanted to be able to go out to eat on the weekends, and I knew that my parents weren't going to be able to provide that for me, so I had to go out and get it myself. So started working when I was 14, 15, built this record label, both because I wanted to, but also as a means to, hey, if I sell, 200 records at $5 a piece, I can make $1,000 in a weekend, and I can go, lease a car,
Right.
I can go pay for the car, and I can go take my girlfriend, who ended up being my wife, out to the Olive Garden, and I could afford $5 for pizza after going out on a night. And I knew that if whatever I wanted, I had to go out and create it. But the powerful thing was is that I knew that I could go out and create it, right? So many people have this scarcity mindset of, well, if I want to go on vacation, I need to come back and not drink lattes this week. That's not your problem. Your problem is that you don't have a means to create more income or the means to go out and build the things that you want in your life. But the thing is, you do, right? You can go out and you can go referee Little League games on the weekends and, making an extra couple $100. You can go sell your artwork at the farmer's market. You can go put your, if you're a musician, put your beats and your songwriting, your lyrics online, and people will pay for them. You can, start an online business. You can do all this cool stuff. So instead of this scarcity mindset, think of this abundance mindset that's out there and find a way. And that's what we really teach with Ambitious is there are people out there who are doing this, and I want you to model their success, but I also want you to see that you don't have to stay in and watch Netflix and cut back on that $5 latte. You can create abundance in your life just by helping others. And by helping others, they'll pay you. They'll, open their doors to you. They'll, allow you to come and, spend a weekend with them at the Hamptons or whatever the case is. But you can't have that scarcity mindset. You have to know that the world is there for your taking, and you got to go out and take it. And that goes back to when I was, 14, 15 years old, just because I wanted a cool T-shirt and a car to drive.
And speaking of getting what you want, creating abundance, moving away from the scarcity mindset, when we come back, we're going to have Greg go into some of his best strategies that he's learned from some of the top leaders in the world from Ambitious.com and all the hundreds of experts he's had a chance to interview and learn from. That and a whole lot more on GrowthToFreedom.com with Greg Rollett. Welcome back to GrowthToFreedom.com, the show that helps you transform your life, business, and relationships. Let's summarize the first segment of the show. We've got Greg Rollett, who's an expert. He's a president of Ambitious Media Group, founder of Ambitious.com, and we've been talking about the idea of modeling, ambitious, getting what you want. In fact, finding a why as well as finding a way. In other words, your passion is one thing, but having a blueprint to match up is equally as important. We've been talking about some of his success traits that not only his wife enjoys about him, but also that he is looking to set as an example for his kids, including hard work and determination, right? And so, Greg, obviously you've had what most people looking from the outside in would be this like blue chip career, right? This stardom, if you will, of almost a celebrity overall. So let's back up a little bit to lay some context to this. I mean, because again, you epitomize the idea of going after what you want, but success is not a straight line. So I want you to think about your biggest failure to date, or maybe your lowest point in running your business, and talk about that a little bit. What'd you learn from it? And ultimately, as you think about as it relates to your family, your kids, what do you hope your kids would learn from some of your failures and or your mistakes?
Yeah, so I think the lowest point for me, I was doing the band thing. We were getting set to do a 15-city tour around the East Coast, and great venues. We were opening up for this band. We'd be selling out, playing in front of 400 or 500 people every single night for these 15 dates. Backing up just before that is I had just gotten married the month before, and I had taken all of our wedding money, right? This is like, I was 23 years old. I got married early, but I took all of our wedding money, the money that you're supposed to go like buy fine china with and the new couch and the new sofa, and I took all of that, and somehow I convinced my wife, and somehow she's still with me today, to go and buy a trailer and T-shirts and CDs and buttons and hats and stickers and all the stuff for the tour. Well, 2 days before the tour, at this point, I'm in a band. We're kind of like Linkin Park. I'm the rapper. We had a singer and guitar player in the whole band. And the guitar player, who's also the singer, and one of the other members, decided they no longer wanted to move forward with this.
Oof.
And so I had just gotten married, and that's like the highlight of your life, right? Best day ever. And then a month later, I literally had my heart ripped out from me because this thing that we've been working so hard. These are guys that I had slept on roach motels with, and we'd eaten ramen noodles in the back of vans that we had to heat up with like hot water from like a bathroom that we had to like heat the water up, and that's how we were eating ramen noodles, right? And these were guys, you know, they were family, and literally felt like my heart got ripped out of me. And so for about, 3 months, I did nothing but sleep on the couch and, feel bad for myself, and my life is over, and woe is me. And it was really bad because you're riding such a high, especially being in the music industry. I mean, you got a little bit of an ego, and you like being on stage, and you like having, people sing your songs and all that great stuff, and all of a sudden that's ripped away from you. It strips away a lot of who I was at the time. The good news is that it was really an awakening for what was next kind of in my life. Is my wife's parents came over to me, and they were just like, hey, man, you just kind of married our daughter. You need to, get your stuff together and, support her,
Right.
And so it was kind of that awakening call. And they actually, so again, 23 years old, different person than who I am now. They were like, hey, you're coming with us to this conference this weekend. And the last thing that a 23-year-old music guy wants to do is go with their in-laws to, at the time, like an internet marketing conference or a networking conference. I mean, you guys everybody's been to one of these things. And the last thing that you want to do. But it ended up changing my entire life because they believed in me. They actually opened up their credit cards to me and got me enrolled into some of these programs and coaching groups and all this. And it started really my first true business. I know it had these like side businesses, but a record label in high school where you're making a couple $100, a couple $1,000 here and there. It's a business, but it's not a business, right? So this was finally kind of the eye-opening event. So that low point in my life opened me up to, hey, you know what? I do have to do something to support myself and support my family and take care of my wife. And I do want kids, and I do want something bigger for myself than what we're doing now. So that low point really turned into a high point because without that, heck, I might still be playing dive bars in front of 500 people. And yeah, it might be cool. You might have a couple war stories to talk about, but nothing like the life I've been able to create for myself because of, that failure or that roadblock or that moment in time where you think that all hope is lost, that the whole world is crashing down on you. It's really not. It's just another door opening. You just got to go and find that door and crack it open, and then kick it down. It's not enough to just walk through it. I walk through everything by kicking doors down, and so. Hopefully that kind of got you the story you were looking for.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's apparent to me that you're just a guy who's not afraid to make mistakes, and when you make them, you just keep moving forward, one step in front of the other. And, it's, like that old saying, it's not whether you get knocked down, it's how long you stay down. And you seem to be a guy that, like all of us, it's normal to be down for a minute, but let's not make that longer than it needs to be. So let's get back up and, as you call it, kick that door down. So that's fantastic. Now, as you think about your I guess your role from 23, now you're in your mid-30s, you're building ambitious.com. I know along the way, one of your partners is Nick Nanton, who I've gotten a chance to know over the last couple of years as well through Genius Network. One of the things that you guys have been experts at being able to help people improve their positioning in their marketplace and work with high-profile people. You're doing a documentary with, one of the Forbes top 50 most influential people, Peter Diamandis, right? And yep. You do this not only for high-profile people, but small business owners as well. What would you say as a couple strategies or tips that someone could walk away with to work to improve their positioning today, whether that's to go out and improve their positioning for a new career, new job, and or, for, call it mini celebrity in their particular marketplace?
Yeah, so I think it first starts by, identifying these key stories and moments in your life that you can leverage. So, me talking about being the rapper in the rock band and doing the touring, and also me talking about that low point in my life, there's certain people that when I said those kind of things, it like an alarm went off in their head, and they started paying much more attention. Maybe they were a musician in high school or college or whatever it is, or maybe they got married young, or maybe they lost the love of their life who was their high school sweetheart, but all these little triggers. And so everyone has these stories and these events in their life, and we usually dismiss them. And so one of the things that Nick taught me was to use these stories and these points in everything that I do and turn that into leverageable marketing assets. And so that story that I just told, I told it for a purpose, and there's a purpose behind it, and obviously it's entertaining, but at the same time it got people to pay attention.
Yep.
Now what I do is I go and I tell these stories in media. So today I'm on the radio, I'm hanging out, I'm talking with Dan, and I'm telling these stories on the radio, and it's allowing me to further my story, further my mission. So I think the first thing you have to do is identify all those points. See, my life, I thought was super boring, right? Even though I was a musician, doing all this cool stuff, until someone came and sat me down and said, you've actually done some really cool stuff. All I'm doing is I'm talking about the stuff that everyone else has done.
Yep.
Right? So you need to identify those points. Even if you're listening right now, you're like, oh, I'm just a real estate agent. I haven't done, like, who have you sold houses to? What kind of cool houses have you sold? How did you get into real estate? You know, as you feel, you say, what are the moments in time that you can create stories around that are stories worth telling? And then you use media. You use radio. You use newspapers. You use magazines. You use blogs. You use emails. You use newsletters. You use whatever it is to then tell those stories. And that's what helps to build your legend. So, yeah, I'm 32. I'm a young guy. I'm doing cool stuff. But you know that because I tell my story so much, right? Because I have guys out there like Dan telling my story for me, and you can do the exact same thing. Identify the stories and then find ways to leverage media. And there's two types of media: mass media, like the radio, like we're on today, or direct media. So you say, you know what, Greg, I can't get on the radio. I don't know Dan. Dan's an awesome guy. He's got guests lined up for weeks and months, right? But you have your own media. And you start a podcast. And can you email all of your current customers or prospects a link to your podcast? Can you blog? Can you just create a newsletter? Can you just create email?
And that's fantastic guidance, advice. And you know what? When we come back with Greg Rollett, we're going to go more into how to leverage your story to build your legend on growthtofreedom.com. Welcome back to growthtofreedom.com. Wow, what an incredible show today. Let's summarize the first two segments of the show. First of all, we're talking about modeling, be ambitious, getting what you want. In fact, what if you could tap into a series of resources, strategies, be inspired, get access to coaching and wisdom that just isn't available anywhere else? Today's guest is Greg Rollett, and we've been talking about, wow, a lot of things. Getting what you want, finding a why, finding a way. That passion is one thing. Having that blueprint is incredibly important. A couple of the success traits that he's used to catapult his career: determination, hard work, about kicking doors down. Don't be afraid to make mistakes. Build your legend, right? Build your legend. He left off with talking about how you can turn what may seemingly seem like unimportant experiences, in other words, your stories, how to use your stories, your turning point, wisdom, if you will, to be able to convert that into something that's compelling that people want to learn more about leveraging media. And two ways to do that: there's mass media and creating your own media. I mean, wow, Greg, we've covered a lot in just a short window here, haven't we?
We sure have, man. Let's see if we got any more firepower left for the rest of the show.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm sure you've got a lot saved up for us. So, knowing what you know now, right, building your business, building your success, being partnered with Nick, now building ambitious.com, what would you look at doing differently that would have sped things up for you, your business, and your success?
So it's a great question. You kind of started to have the answer there. I get asked a lot, what would you tell your 18-year-old self, even though that wasn't that long ago for me?
Yep.
Like, what would you tell your younger self? And a lot of people, as they reflect on their life, they're like, I wish I would have slowed down. I wish I would have been, kind of seen what was happening around me and felt the moment. And I'm the exact opposite. I'm like, man, what if I knew what I know now and I put the pedal down to the floor even harder when I was 18? Could I have been on TRL and MTV and everything that I wanted to do? And so I think, especially when you're younger now that, again, I'm not that old, but I got two kids, one that doesn't sleep in the middle of the night, so it's fantastic. We got the business, you got employees, you get, mortgage payments, and life smacks you in the face, and you run out of hours in the day. When you're 18, you have a lot of extra hours in the day. So I wish if I could go back, I would put the pedal down harder then because, again, you can recover faster. I can't recover on 4 hours of sleep the way I used to when I was 18 to 21, So I would have put the pedal down harder, and I would have invested a lot of that time into creating media platforms. And that's obviously what we're trying to do with Ambitious now. But, I look back and I was just like, man, if I had done a podcast, once a week, every week, 4 years ago, I'd be 200-something shows in. Right? That's just like once a week. There's 52 weeks in a year, so take 2 weeks off, 50 shows, 4 years, 200, shows. That is a lot of shows. I wish I would have written, 1 or 2 blog posts a week for the last 3-4 years. I wish I would have leveraged media because what happens is it really starts to compound, right?
Yep.
And, people, there's like, well, a guy like Dan's been on the radio forever, and he's got all these shows. Yeah, but he had show number 1. He just happened to start show number 1 whenever you started show number 1, right?
Yep.
So you got to start with that first show, and I think it's creating consistent communication to your tribe, to your marketplace, to whoever it is that you want. And so those are the things that I would have gone back on, is I would have created that media platform earlier, because I know the power of a media platform. And a media platform, so it could be a blog, it could be a podcast, it could be a radio show, it could be an email list, it could be just your customer list that you are constantly communicating to, because the power in having this, and Dan, you know this as well, if you have an email list of customers who open your stuff, well, you can send an email out to them and you can move mountains, right?
Yep.
You can, make incredible things happen. A is you can sell your products and services a lot more effortlessly. It's not effortless, and it's never super easy, but it's a lot easier when you have rabid fans who listen to you. I mean, think about it. If you had 200 podcasts, all an hour long each, and someone had listened to all 200 hours of them, and you're a real estate agent, are they going to use another real estate agent? There's no way in the world. You have 200 hours into their mind, that you've been shaping them and getting them to believe the way that you believe and think the way that you think, and it makes that process that much easier. So that younger self, that's exactly what I would be doing, is building those media platforms, building what our mutual friend Sally Hogshead calls opinions of authority. Because as you go, and doesn't matter what business you're in, doesn't even matter if you're a professional trying to grow your career, my belief, and I got this from Sally, is that you need opinions of authority, meaning that no one wants to go to the brain surgeon who says, you know what, Dan, we could cut this way, maybe I'll go that. No, you want your brain surgeon to say, hey, man, this is how we're going in, this is exactly what we're doing, and this is the result you're going to get. Same thing, a financial advisor. You don't want your financial advisor to go, the markets could go up or down, so maybe. You want someone that has a strong opinion of authority. And so by doing these shows, by creating this voice, by creating this media, you have the opportunity to instill those opinions of authority and get other people to start to believe the way that you believe. And ultimately, they're going to take the behavior that you want them to take, which is to do business with you, donate to your charity, come to your events and functions, whatever the case is. So that is real big lesson, I think, for everybody that's listening right here, right now, today.
That is a wealth of wisdom, and thank you for that, Greg. I mean that is a power punch coming at you as you're watching, as you're listening right now. I hope you're taking notes, and if not, you can go back and listen to this segment of the show at growthtofreedom.com/28. That's growthtofreedom.com/28. And by the way, when we come back, we're going to have Greg go into some of his best rituals and strategies that he utilizes today to be his best self, his productive self, some of the people he learns from, the modeling that he does for building his media empire at ambitious.com, that and a whole lot more on growthtofreedom.com with Greg Rollett. Welcome back to growthtofreedom.com. Wow, we're coming down the home stretch here and talking about modeling, ambitious, getting what you want. In fact, let's summarize the first 3 segments of the shows. We've been talking about with Greg Rollett, who's the founder of Ambitious Media Group and ambitious.com. He's been talking about getting what you want, building your legend. I mean, you have a story inside of you, don't you? And you have a lot of personal experiences as stories that you could turn in to inspiration for other people to start building what he calls your media platform. And you could start that today by writing a blog, writing emails, creating your own podcast, creating your own shows to own the media, and then start leveraging it with the mass media and getting it out with mass exposure. And we left off there, Greg, and I'd love to get your take. As you think about what you do, what's your stupid human trick? What is it you do in your mind better than most people? Just out of curiosity.
Man, I don't know. Like I'm almost like the jack of all trades guy versus I don't remember the quite the frame, master of none type of thing. But I think I'm really good at getting the story out of people. So getting the real story out of people, and that really gets people to open up. So. Again, asking those questions, saying that, hey, you got a story inside of you. If you, it's just a conversation. Maybe you're at a bar, or you're on an airplane, or you're on a train, or wherever you are, striking up a real conversation with someone going deeper than, so Dan, what do you do? I'm a dentist, right?
Right.
Go deeper than that. Really figure out, what is the story behind that person? How did he get there? And that's been a really big superpower to, me to leverage in the media world is you got to get people to tell that compelling story. And I guess that's my stupid human trick. It's just asking the extra question that also I think comes from my introvertedness, right? So even though I'm energetic and I sound, maybe I'm loud maybe on the show today, but I'm very introverted in the fact that I don't like being in crowds. I don't really like people. So what I do is I'm a big listener. And in order to listen, you got to ask great questions. And so I've been really good at asking the great questions so that I get to intake the information that I want to hear from people.
Well, that's great advice. Now, thinking of your day, right, and the rituals that you utilize. I've heard you in the other interviews you've done, you talk about modeling, the importance of modeling, how important it's been for you. I think you cite that Tony Robbins was where you feel you learned it first. So talk about the importance of modeling and how can people use it to go to that next level in their personal life, their business, and or their relationships.
Yeah, so Tony is actually the person that actually figured out what I was actually doing. I think
Right.
I was doing this. I think I was doing this my whole life. I think, when I was 5 years old, I was, looking in a mirror, swinging a baseball bat like it was, the bottom of the ninth with 2 outs, and I was modeling Mickey Mantle or Babe Ruth or Barry Bonds or whoever it was. And then getting into the kind of the rapper story, I was modeling some of the successful hip-hop moguls at the time, the Master P's, the Cash Money Records. And not that I wanted to be them or emulate them, but, the cool thing that I always saw is that, hey, if he did it, I can do it too. How did he do it, right?
Yep.
I think that's the key to success in modeling is, not being envious, not being jealous, but saying, hey, if this guy can do it, I bet I can do it too. Opinions aside of Trump, I bet there's people out there going, hey, if this guy can do it, I bet I could run for office too, right? And so it's having the open-mindedness to know that, it's not the 1% versus the 99%. It's how do I join the 1%? That means there's a shot. That means I can actually get there. And so I've always looked for those people and then try to, reverse engineer them. Like, who were the people that they met? What are the steps that they took? What are the jobs that they got? I got a friend who just got a job at Google, and she went to the University of Central Florida with me. People from the University of Central Florida don't work at Google, right?
Right.
It doesn't work like that. You go to Stanford, you go to MIT, whatever it is. You don't go to, so I'm like, how did she do this? And so we had a long conversation, like, who did you meet? What were the steps along the way? And just reverse engineered how she did it. And then you have to just find a way to model that in your own way. Who are the people? Who are the events? What did they read? Who inspired them? And I think that's the power of modeling. And I try to do that. I try to take the best from, people in both my professional life and my personal life. So now as I'm building Ambitious, I'm looking at the Ariana Huffingtons of the world who built the Huffington Post. I'm looking at Shane Smith, who built Vice.com from a magazine covering punk rock concerts in the 80s to $1 billion media brand. So I'm following them, but I'm also following people in my personal life. Who are the fitness people that I need to and the nutrition people so that I take care of myself? Who are the dads out there who I really love who take care of their kids and they're there for their family? And so I just try and take the best from that and put it in my own words, and that's how I try to, live my life is through taking the best of what's out there in the world.
Oh, that's great advice. I know when we were having our conversation for what it seemed like a half an hour, but it was probably only like 5 minutes at Joe's event the other day, there was something that struck me that was fascinating in your thinking about the thinking of where you're taking the next level of Ambitious.com, what you're doing with Nick at DNA Agency. And I want to dive into that just a little bit because there was a nugget you shared there that I think applies to everyone who will pay attention to what you might provide an insight here, Greg. And that was the idea of shifting, Dan Sullivan, who do you want to be a hero to, right? And you talked about serving a certain community. I don't know if you remember our conversation, but it really struck me, the insight that you had. I mean, you're a guy in your 30s, you're building all this success, and you're so aware of it that you're serving a certain community, and then you said, what would be a better way, right? And now here you are doing documentaries for someone like Peter Diamandis and interviewing people like Richard Branson, right? And that type of people. So talk about the mindset. I heard an interview you did where you recommended a book called Marketing to the Affluent with Dan Kennedy. I don't know if that plays into it, but just hit on that concept or that wisdom, if you would.
Well, so I think it was Peter Diamandis, actually, that challenged both Nick and I, and he talks about this in his book, the new one he just wrote called Bold, and it's this idea of what needs to happen in order for you to 10x what you're currently doing, right? So right now, Nick and I at the agency have about 2,500 clients, right? And we look at that, and if we go to 10x that, which is 25,000 clients, how do we do that? And you have to look at things completely different, because we're like, if we were to do the same thing that we did to get these 2,500 to get 25,000, we would be going crazy. We'd be insane. So you have to look at things from a completely different standpoint, from building systems, or is this the business that we really want to be in? And so Nick and I are really shooting for the moon now in what we're trying to do. And that, again, it's an evolution of media, I think, is that, by blogging, I can reach so many people that read my blog. And yeah, you can reach millions of people and all that. But how can I now leverage relationships with an HBO or a National Geographic or Time Magazine or whoever the case is, who already has millions of people and tens of millions of people that you can get your message across? And how can we leverage that to then bring services to our clients and bring the best of that to our clients? So the challenge I have to those of you listening right now is, whether you're a coach, an entrepreneur, a real estate agent, a financial advisor, how do you 10x your business? And think about what needs to happen in order to do that, because you can't just do 10 times more advertising, right? It's not going to net the same results. You can't just do 10 times more dinner seminars if you're a financial advisor. You can't just do 10 times more open houses. That's not going to net you that. You have to completely throw away the book and start from scratch. And maybe it is serving a different market. Maybe it's finding a way to create leverage. Maybe it's finding, partners. Maybe it's, we're building out teams and sales teams, all these different kinds of things, because I can't physically do that, right? And so I think the challenge is, look at your business or your life, and how do you 10x it? You can't do the same things that got you here to get you there. And so that's why we've developed Ambitious as a media platform, because through this media platform, I can have distribution into the phone carriers. I can have distribution to cable networks when we start building out, some of the video parts. I can have distribution through local newspapers who want our contacts and our content to push into their newspapers, which then drive people back to our site. I can leverage colleges who have all of these students who are getting journalism degrees and communication degrees, who need portfolio work, who can write for the site. And now, instead of, just having a workforce, I'm in Orlando, Florida, now I can have writers all around the country, and then you can go all around the world, because guess what? There's universities in, Brazil and Venezuela and the UK. And now we're starting to think of our business from this much more global standpoint versus just what can we do, just Nick and I, or just myself. And that's been one of the biggest exercises, and I can't recommend it enough to, hey, if you got to go have a drink and sit at the bar and map this out, do it. If you got to go get away on a 3-day vacation. But it is very important that you do this type of thinking, because when you shoot for the moon and you miss, you still wind up off the earth and doing some pretty incredible things. So I can't recommend that exercise enough.
That's just incredible advice. Global thinking, as you're watching right now, as you're listening, what needs to happen for you to 10x what you're doing? I mean, what would you need to be doing? And it is that different viewpoint, that different standpoint, if you will, that 30,000-foot view, if not, standing on top of the moon and looking back over what had happened. Now, I want to give you a chance, Greg, to share with our viewers, our listeners, how they can reach you. I want to read something to you as you're watching or listening right now that I pulled off Greg's site at ambitious.com. He says, I believe that most people, especially those living in America today, are leading lives of quiet desperation, and not the kind of desperation that Henry David Thoreau wrote about in Walden back in 1854. I'm talking about a desperation to find something worth living for, worth fighting for, worth actually having the motivation to get out of bed on that first tone of their alarm clock kind of desperation. Instead, they lie helpless, stuck in the drudgery of everyday life to refill their 2 weeks of vacation time, and for 4:59 p.m. to change over to 5 p.m. on their iPhones and computer screens. According to the good folks at the U.S. Census, nearly 1 in 6 dudes aged 25 to 34 live at home with their parents. That means they're not married, nor have they started their family yet or bought a home with that white picket fence. Maybe, surprisingly, that's exactly how I feel as I'm writing this today. And you go on to tell the story of why you created ambitious.com. So how can people reach you, Greg? What are you looking for? What do you need help with? Go for it.
Man, you just made me sound really smart with that writing. But no, obviously I'd love for people to go, especially if you're a young person out there, or maybe you have kids who are in college, getting out of college, and they need a little kick in the butt, kick in the pants to get them jump started. Would love for them, and even if you're young at heart, check out ambitious.com, read some of the stories. I mean, such incredible people from, we found a hip hop artist who works a 9 to 5 and he drives an Uber car at night just to get enough money to fund his gospel hip hop album. We have a model in the UK who, became disabled when in her late teens, early 20s, and now is a cover model despite her disability. I mean, just these incredibly inspiring stories, and then you get the how-tos behind it. How do you actually go out and get this? So I'd love for you to read ambitious.com, leave some comments, let us know what you think. But if you have a story that's worth sharing, we'd love to tell it there too. And if you want to write, contribute, obviously we'd love to have you there. But man, Dan, this has been fantastic, man. I love chatting with you. You get me super fired up, and hopefully we fired up some people at home who aren't going to, watch The Walking Dead on Netflix this weekend, and they're going to get out there in whether their local community, they go take a trip, whatever it is, and they create a life worth living, where they're not the ones scrolling through their Facebook feed or their Instagram or whatever it is, but they're creating the posts that others are envious of and jealous of on their Instagram feeds and their Facebook feeds. If we did that today, I think both of us got a nice win for the time we spent on the phone today.
I agree, my friend. I agree wholeheartedly, and I want to encourage you as you're watching, listening right now, number one, seize the day. Number two, go visit ambitious.com. Check out some of the stories. If you've got a story inside of you, hey, reach out to Greg and his team, submit it. You just never know who you might inspire today. And it's our goal to bring you the best in inspiration, the best in wisdom, the best coaching guidance not available anywhere else. And that's what Growth to Freedom is all about. Greg, I want to thank you for being a part of the show. I know I'm smarter for it now by having you on the show. I hope we can do this again sometime. Check in a few months from now, see how things are going with ambitious.com. How's that sound?
That sounds fantastic, man. Thanks so much.
Awesome. Thanks for being with us. And you folks, as you're watching, as you're listening, that's our show for today. I appreciate you. But here's the thing. You're at a defining moment, and the moment defines you, or you define the moment. What are you going to do in this moment? Are you going to do what a lot of people do and just kind of take it in and let it roll off your back? Or are you going to do what Greg talked about and take action with what you've learned today about going out and getting what you want, building your legend, starting to build your own media platform to connect with other people? I challenge you. Take that first step. Take action now. You can get a recap of our show today at growthtofreedom.com/28. That's growthtofreedom.com/28. And if this show's touched you or inspired you in some way, I hope either in your head or in your heart or even out loud, I hope you'll repeat after me. I'm a winner. I'm a champion. I'm the best. I deserve it. Find a mastermind group, find a collaboration group, find a coaching group in your area. Seize the day. Make it a great week. Next time on growthtofreedom.com, we're going to bring you more to transform your life, your business, your relationships. And for Greg Rollett, make sure to go out and check out ambitious.com. Find out what they're up to over there. See if your story can inspire others. And apply the concepts of modeling, being ambitious, getting what you want. And there you have it. I challenge you. Go for it. Seize the day. Make it a great week. And we'll see you next time on growthtofreedom.com.